think you have to take some of those prospecting mentalities and apply them to existing clients as well. 3 times the amount of business for experiential agencies has had to come from and has come from existing clients.
Are you ready to level up your sales game? Welcome to OnBD with ALF, the podcast that brings you the best advice and success stories from industry leaders in media and advertising. Each episode, we tackle the challenges of new business to help you elevate your own sales strategy. If you're in business development and looking to sharpen your sales techniques, discover actionable insights, and stay ahead of the competition, you're in the right place. Tune in, subscribe, and get ready to take some notes with OnBD with ALF. Today, we're going into the world of experiential and new business and sales, and I'm joined by Nick Adams, CEO of Sense. Welcome, Nick. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm very good. Nice to be on.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we're going to get into it and talk about what you guys are up to at Sense. But first of all, Nick, I want to hear a little bit more about you. So let's start there. Give me a bit of an overview of your journey so far.
Yeah, the potted history. I'll try not to ramble on for too long. So, so I'm Nick. I'm CEO of Sense, as you say, a brand experience agency. I came into the agency world pretty early on, actually. Haven't had a particularly, I guess, kind of interesting career in terms of I haven't moved around huge amounts and done many kind of different roles. But I came out of university. I was very fortunate to grab a week's work experience with an agency which I realised very quickly I didn't have a clue what they did, and I didn't really understand marketing advertising, but I latterly found out that they were a below-the-line marketing agency back in the this was quite a few years ago. I stayed at that agency. It was called Triangle Communications. It was one of sort of the bigger through the line, below the line kind of agencies back in those days, and stayed there for about 14 years, I think. I was very lucky, had lots of experience of different types of marketing disciplines, working with different clients across different sectors. So looking back, it was a great sort of training ground, I guess, and sort of cutting my teeth in agency world and marketing. I then had another great opportunity to set up a subsidiary of Triangle, which we called Lime, which really specialised in brand experience and experiential. It was a strategic move by the agency to take that work in-house and have a subsidiary within the business. So that was fantastic for me. It was like a startup. Well, it was a startup, knocking around a separate office on my own, wondering how to make money and how to win clients. So a brilliant kind of training ground. And then finalising the sort of story, I set up Sense in 2005. Felt like it was time to sort of take that plunge and grasp the nettle and all other cliches, and set up my own kind of agency. So yeah, did that in 2005. And here we are 20 something kind of years later. Really exciting time in 20 years ago. Experiential was really, I think, in the UK kind of kicking off as a sort of a discipline in its own right, with a few agencies beginning to specialise. So saw the opportunity, and yes, touch wood, still here today.
Brilliant. Well, so you've been at Sense, as you've said, for about 20 years, and you've gone through that initial journey and setting up in your own right. How has the process for you in terms of new business and winning clients kind of changed over that period?
Yeah, I mean, I generally, it's one of the most challenging bits of the business, and I guess probably for kind of all agencies, and it's changed hugely. I mean, unrecognisable, I think, in those 20 years. I think all those years ago, it was fundamentally about relationships, and of course it still is today, but it was a lot simpler in some respects. There was very little digital kind of media and social platforms. The techniques, I suppose, and the strategies for how you went around new business was a lot kind of simpler. I think it was about just leveraging those kind of relationships, and particularly face-to-face relationships. And over the years, with the advent of kind of digital I think obviously also with the agency landscape becoming so much more competitive, I think back then there were hundreds of independent agencies in the UK. I'm not sure exactly the statistic now, but I think it's something like 25,000 independent agencies in the UK.
Wow.
So it's become so much more competitive, and there are so many different ways now to do new business. So it feels like your new business strategy has to be so much more sort of multi-layered than how it once was. And I think the learning curve, is constantly on a very steep kind of incline. I think for us, we're constantly reviewing and recalibrating what we're doing every year, trying to find that silver bullet that probably doesn't exist. So yeah, it's become much more fragmented, much more involved. With that, it's become much more time intensive, I think. And, it really draws on your marketing capabilities. I think agencies have got to be, do what we do for our clients, and just got to be very sort of always on, and just constantly sort of learning and sharpening your sort of skills. So very, very different, much more involved, much more difficult, and much more sort of thought-provoking and time intensive, I think, than perhaps once it was.
You know what, Nick, you really made me feel calm talking about the good old days of, not as much competition, just about relationships, a simpler time. And it's not like that anymore. And you point out there, I know it's forever changing, because sales, our tools, how people want to be sold to, basically changes every week, it feels like now, especially as different generations become decision makers. Things do change. And you said that there are so many layers that you look at now at Sense. Can you kind of give me a bit of an overview of what some of those layers, or the important ones, are?
I mean, I guess the sort of simple ones, is that sort of relationship between outbound marketing versus encouraging kind of inbound inquiries and inbound kind of business. And those two sides of the coin, I think, require very different strategies, very different kind of skill sets. For us, it's that constant balance between thought leadership and reputation and marketing versus leveraging just the work that we're doing. Experiential is a very visual discipline. A lot of our new business simply comes from prospect spotting events we've done, activations we've run, and gone, wow, that looks amazing, we want one of those, and we've been thinking about something similar. So some of those layers are that balance between outbound and kind of inbound, I guess, thought leadership versus kind of work. I think all of everything that we need to do now around kind of socials as well is obviously a big kind of factor. We're constantly looking at exactly the role that that's playing for us, and that's quite hard to kind of analyze in itself, but it feels like you just have to be there to play. It's it's something you just kind of need to do, of course, to keep up your reputation, keep that brand sort of visibility out there. So I think it's quite easy, I think, for agencies to slip into, being a little bit kind of busy fools, trying to keep all of these different sort of plates spinning, in those different silos of, direct prospecting, so sales, versus what's marketing and reputation building and making sure your brand is visible out there. Then also kind of PR and what you're doing there. And I think those three verticals for us, prospecting, marketing and PR, underneath those have very different tactics, very different sort of things that we kind of do. So those are some of the sort of layers, I guess, that you have to constantly kind of, as I say, kind of recalibrate and make sure that they're all playing the role that they should be doing.
So those three kind of pillars that you've mentioned there, so prospecting, marketing, PR, do you have kind of a time split, a perfect kind of time split in terms of what you should be focused on in those three, or is it just as much as you can across all three? What's the priority?
I think probably the priority for us is, most definitely the priority for us is kind of prospecting. I think we're I probably picked quite a hard discipline in terms of like, brand experience and experiential for a lot of brands is a very tactical kind of discipline. I mean, yes, we have long-standing relationships with clients and we work with clients on a strategic level as well, which is kind of great. But for a lot of brands, it can be short term, it can be kind of tactical. It can fit 1 year within a strategy for a brand and their brand plan, and the next year, changing circumstances, changing kind of directions, it has less of a role. So what that brings around for, I think, experiential agencies and agencies, who again are doing lots of kind of tactical work, is the constant need to be kind of always on, the constant need to be topping up that kind of bucket, if you like, because, however good our relationship and however strong it is with a client, to a lot of clients, we are a project, discipline specific kind of agency. We're not an integrated agency. We do offer a very specific type of kind of work. So coming back to your kind of question, sorry, that means that prospecting probably takes the lion's share of our kind of time. And our kind of focus. Marketing and PR is super important, but really is around the surround sound, I suppose, and as I say, just keeping mental availability with our kind of prospects, making sure that when they do think about what we do, and making sure that Sense is one of the first names that kind of pops into their kind of minds there. So yeah, and I think the other kind of big change is, I think prospecting and selling, once was always about just new business, bringing in those new clients that you never worked with. I think now there is a real blurred line. I think you have to take some of those prospecting mentalities and apply them to existing clients as well. I think certainly within brand experience, I read something the other day that I think there's been a 23%, this report I read, downturn in new business out there in our space. Since 2022, this report was saying that sort of 3 times the amount of business for experiential agencies has had to come from existing clients. So I think whereas prospecting was once always the sort of let's win new clients we've never worked with before, I think you've got to apply those mentalities and some of those techniques to the existing clients that you're trying to retain, trying to grow as well.
Yeah, you've got to treat existing or previous clients as new clients in that process.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Okay, great. It sounds exhausting, Nick. Constant new business.
Constant new business.
Constant new business.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of what's going on at the moment, then what's the biggest challenge that you guys are facing when it's coming to winning either new clients or new clients?
I think one of the big challenges for us is the positive, I suppose, to start on a positive, is that we have a lot of experience across a lot of different kind of sectors, working with lots of different types of brands. Brand experiential has grown and is growing because it is so much now, it's more applicable now, and there's a role for it across so many different business sectors, from business to business to business to consumer. As I say, right across different sorts of industries. 20 years ago, I would say that in the UK, FMCG used a lot of brand experience and experiential, but, it was less prevalent in other industries. So the great thing is that we've got lots of experience working across lots of different situations, lots of different kind of brands. I think with that, though, the challenge that brings is reminding yourself and trying to specialize. I think it's very easy for brand experience agencies to be generalists, and that's good from some perspectives because you can turn your hand to a lot of briefs. But the downside, and something we talk a lot about at Sense, is really, though, reminding ourselves that being a generalist, being able to respond to all sorts of briefs for all sorts of brands is not necessarily always the best thing. I do believe in a lot of that scarcity philosophies, if you like, with agencies, and really having a sharp proposition, being 100% clear on who do you want to work with, what sort of work do you want to do, and how can you really kind of add value. And to be honest, that's in difficult times, and I think it's quite a difficult climate now in the UK for sure. I think constantly reminding yourself of that and being disciplined and true to that is quite a challenge. There's a real tendency just to go after the next shiny thing. but not always the right thing. So that's I think kind of a challenge. I think the other big challenge is it feels like relationships are perhaps more transactional than they were. It's much more difficult now to grow those long-term client relationships, to have that really, when I started out in this industry, the first account that I ever worked on, I think, was Cadbury's. The agency had worked on it for 31 years, something like that. I think now, I'm sure there are those long-standing relationships with agents and clients in our industry, but I just think the speed, the agility that clients are working, the competitiveness, if you're a client now with a brand experience brief, you have umpteen agencies that are going to do an amazing job at responding to that brief. So I think generally business has become faster paced, more transactional, relationships, dare I say it, perhaps a little bit more disposable than perhaps they were. Doing a great job now on a project and having a great relationship whilst you're working kind of hand in glove with a client, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to work with them next year, that you're going to be able to turn that into something kind of longer term. So yeah, that's a real, I think that's a difficulty for sure in the current kind of climate.
Yeah.
And I mean, a very specific, this is a little bit more sort of day to day, I guess, but within brand experience, just the nature, how you go about pitching and winning work. We are a discipline where we're all about the detail. Clients and brands will want a lot of the detail. A lot of your pitch needs to be right down into the detailed minutiae of kind of plans before you win that work and before you become appointed. So, that's quite a challenge for anybody who works in events and experiences, I think. You spend an awful lot of time pitching and on working on kind of briefs, and the amount of that time that's not billable, if you like, is I think just increasing as things get more competitive.
I suppose that's one of the reasons why you really do need to be selective about the clients that you do want as well. Because you've basically outlined 3 challenges there. That first one is, you said not being too broad, not just accepting everything, but really narrowing down on what you can offer and making sure that you're targeting the right people. You've obviously talked about the nature of sales and how it's become transactional. Basically, I think that's the term you used, isn't it? Which is a good description. If we go back to that first point, how do you identify who your top prospects are? I'm not looking for any trade secrets, but what are the key things that are important for Sense when you're kind of establishing who is it that we really want to be working with?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because it's where our mind shifts have changed quite a lot over the years. I think in the sort of earlier days at Sense, I think our approach was to be led by the market, led by what brands in what sectors are in growth, what sectors are in growth, who's using experiential as part of their plans, more than kind of others. So we would do a lot of research, and don't get me wrong, this is still a big factor, of course, but we would be led by who is kind of spending what and almost sort of follow the kind of market. And I think that felt very sensible kind of at the time. And as I say, we still do. It's still definitely something we do when we're kind of building our strategy. But actually, in recent years, more so, I think it's been a bit more inward looking for us, from a sense of actually what are we really good at? Okay, I don't know, experiential in, I don't know, the gaming sector may be growing hugely and therefore that's a valid prospect. Let's kind of put a strategy around that. But actually, what are we kind of really good at? What are the brands that we naturally kind of attract? Where have we done our most successful work, as in really kind of move the needle for a brand, and how can we kind of reapply that? So I guess it's being led less by the market and who is spending what, who's doing what, and more really thinking about our product and our skill sets, and where we can kind of really kind of add value. And I think that, again, it's sometimes hard to do this in practice, but that discipline of meeting a prospect and actually sort of bowing out because you feel actually this is not exactly fitting with our kind of our sort of skill sets and where we can perhaps do our best work, and putting a hand up and saying, actually, it's not a brief necessarily where it's, central to our core kind of capabilities and experience. So I guess, identifying has become more that sort of slightly sort of, kind of purist kind of thought in terms of, being led by what our product is and where it can have the most kind of value. And I know it's a really, really simple thing to say. I mean, it's what we say to our clients all the time, when they're trying to identify new consumers. It's like, well, who does your product really kind of cater for in what situations and that kind of thing. But it's harder to apply those principles yourself to your own kind of business and your own agency, I think.
Yeah. There's always a danger, isn't there, of just wanting, particularly when you're managing a pipeline, that idea of just trying to get it as big as you can in the first instance.
Yeah.
But I think realistically, when you really narrow it down and you can take time to look and see, well, what are the types of brands that we are actually converting? And, what are those billable hours that we're missing in the pitch process that we can avoid as well, by obviously not going through the process with brands that are probably less likely to convert in the end anyway, because you're not providing as good a service as you could for those that you've proved time and time again you have a really strong offering for.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's certainly very easy for us to slip into that. It's all about kind of new, it's all about volume, it's all about getting in front of most of, as many people as we can, as often as we can. And yes, that's a little part of it, but I think the other thing that's changed over the years is, there is so much data you can now look at in terms of assessing the success of kind of what you're doing. And I'm quite a data kind of geek, but I think, looking at all of the different things you're doing, really having, simple systems set up internally so you can just record what's working, what's not working. Sometimes it's not intuitive. Sometimes actually business comes from places where you perhaps don't kind of expect it. So I think constantly having a read on that data, constantly seeing, evaluating what is really working and what's not kind of working, is a really good kind of reminder, I think, to that new business is kind of important, but just being more focused, more kind of targeted. 70% of the time, new briefs for Sense come from brands within our kind of network, connections we've worked with before, clients that have moved, etc. Whereas just, I don't know, that there's a human mind, there's always a tendency to go down the new kind of track and constantly have to open up kind of new relationships. But I guess it's a simple sort of fact of business, fact of life. I think that usually it's going to come from, but brands and people in your direct vision or in your periphery. That's I think that always the case, often the case.
There's a big aspect. I mean, if we just talked about, I'm a bit of a data geek as well, by the way, Nick. I love a CRM system.
Yeah.
Drives my world, but actually trying to get a handle on some of these things can really change how you look at new business. So I completely agree with you. There's a real hunger, isn't there, for getting that new stuff. It's back in the old days, making a cold call, leading to a meeting, and then a tissue meeting, a chemistry meeting, going to pitch, carrying on. And that was a really exciting journey. But actually, if you have the data, you've probably noticed that most of the business that you win is through clients you've worked with before, or new clients, but have people that you've worked with before from other organizations, and a whole range of that. So one of the questions I did have for you, because not everybody has a good handle on what we're referring to is the data, or the stats of new business and where it comes from. What are the key things you would recommend for an agency to look at if they were trying to get a handle on some of these things?
I think one of the key things would be those different sort of strategies in your kind of plan, having some clear metrics against those in terms of, how many new conversations did that bring around? What was then the conversion to an actual brief? And then what was your likelihood to convert that brief into kind of one work? So we have those for a number of different, probably 5 different sort of strands of our new business strategy, which is super helpful in terms of, say, looking back and seeing that actually, X times X percent of briefs convert from this channel versus kind of that channel. So hugely helpful in looking back and seeing what's kind of working, but also from a planning perspective. So our new business plans are driven by historical data. And we'll look back and then we'll apply that to the plans of moving forward in terms of where we try and put our sort of emphasis and where we try and put our kind of time. So yeah, those different channels, whether it be web and SEO, or whether it be meeting via face-to-face events, or outbound thought leadership, or flexing kind of case studies and work, each of those for us has a metric of what's the likelihood of kind of conversion over what duration of time of opportunities and conversations that come through those different routes to market. So as I say, it's really, really simple, but it just allows you, it's a really good reminder to go, oh, actually, briefs that come in through this particular channel, we win 70% of the time, versus a pitch average across the industry of 35 or whatever. So let's just double down and do more of that. It's just a really helpful kind of reminder of really kind of what's kind of working.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So yeah, urging everyone to go and look at the data, look at your campaigns, work out what's working and what's not working so well. You mentioned another challenge a moment ago that I also wanted to go back on, which was this transactional aspect of, and that I suppose that's how sales is changing. Why do you think that's happening?
I think I've really noticed this since COVID. Since how we're all now kind of working in kind of a different way, remote working, Teams meetings, online meetings, etc. A lot of that is really positive for new business. I mean, we have, the number of credentials meetings we have throughout the year is probably more than double than pre-COVID times, just because you can jump on a Teams for 45 minutes with a brand. There's no longer the pain almost, or what was perceived as pain, as getting on a train and going to a meeting and the client having to book a meeting room and all that kind of stuff. So transactional relations, yeah. So I think there's lots of positive things that have come around from, I guess, just the new kind of ways of working. I think in terms of clients and building those relationships, I mean, it's a really kind of obvious one, but trying to build relationships over email, over Teams meetings, is really kind of difficult. I mean, it's just, I think a lot of it flies in the face of just human connection and human nature. A lot of my teams are always sort of saying to me, I really felt I didn't actually really gel with that client until I met them at this event, or we managed to grab that coffee or have a lunch, or whatever it kind of may be. So I think the transactional thing has come around from, it's just so much easier now to meet and engage kind of new agencies, to go and have a little look at what's happening kind of in the marketplace, and perhaps once you whereas you perhaps did pitches with 3 agencies, it's very easy now to extend that to perhaps kind of 5 agencies, just because it's a lot more sort of fluid and it's a lot easier to kind of do that. So I think that's definitely kind of a reason. I do think time pressures on clients as well. Really the time that you could allocate, and I think the brand marketeers could allocate to the softer aspects of relationship kind of development with an agency. I think that's a lot of that has been really compromised, I suppose, and pressurized by just how fast paced marketing is now, and the pressure that the kind of clients are under.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, it does feel it's say all of that. I think the pace, the sort of dynamics of how relationships now sort of play out, all of that means that I think, yeah, this sort of transactional thing that I keep coming back to feels quite a challenge, I think.
I mean, it creates a really tough environment for a salesperson, doesn't it? So, because I agree with you. I mean, COVID, I know we don't want to keep talking about COVID, but it's a real turning point in terms of how the way we all work changed.
Definitely.
And, if you think about prior to that time, it would be very possible to get somebody on the phone that you had never spoken to before, and have an initial conversation with them, have meetings in person, as you say, coffees, lunches, all of these things were daily practice. And they don't exist anymore. And you even mentioned about how clients really want all the detail.
Yeah.
With these pitches now, whereas I suppose before, it was much more about selling yourself and the concept of what it is that you could provide, rather than it just all having to be data driven and kind of
Yeah.
yes, no questions, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, without sounding too sort of like old fashioned and all the rest of it, but obviously, we're a people business. That's, our product is the service we sell, the skill sets, the talent that we've kind of got. It is a people kind of business, right? And I think agency client relationships probably used to be a little bit more sort of structured just around chemistry and relationships, whereas now I think there's probably been a tipping to your product, your service, the ideas you can come up with, the solutions you're going to provide. And of course, that's hugely kind of important. But, many years ago, I think it was first and foremost, it was relationships, it was chemistry, it was trust, it was being a partner to your client that was the most important thing and really underpinned the whole kind of relationship. I feel now that some of that has sort of slipped away a little bit. I don't know whether that ranks as high for clients when they are going out to market, when they're choosing an agency. I think it's now a little bit more on the service you're going to do, the product you're going to sell, the ideas you've got, and that kind of stuff. And as I say, that's of course hugely important. But a lot of pitches now are online. A lot of pitches miss that stage of the chemistry meeting, just to see if you're aligned on your values and how you work, and what a client might be looking for from an agency. And I don't mean the product or the activity or the campaign. I mean, are you on the same page in terms of how you gel as an organization and all that sort of stuff? It sounds a bit perhaps woolly and the sort of softer things, but I think those are fundamentally still hugely important to kind of relationships. Whereas, as I say, some of those have almost been a little bit kind of diluted now. It feels like it's a bit more about your product, your service. What are you going to sell me? For how much? How quickly? Which is, that's quite a challenge.
And I suppose when it comes to sense, it's really important, isn't it? Because even though you're constantly getting that new business, as you've said yourself, it's not all new business. It's those relationships that will keep coming up for the project work repeatedly, over time, that
Yeah.
building that chemistry with a client directly is what brings that repeat business for you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's very hard in events and experiential, because the sort of the life cycle of our relationships is, you'll start off with kind of a client. The nature of experiences events is you have this very high peak of really intense talking all the time, being on a WhatsApp group with clients for, as you run up to an event, and then it kind of peaks and then it dramatically kind of falls. So it's just the nature of the work that we do, that the relationship starts kind of quietly, has this massive, great, intense kind of moment. It's like a relationship when you were going out with someone at school. It gets intense really, really quick, and then the chances of it kind of just dropping off and dying quite quick is quite high as well. So, and I think that is a symptom of the discipline we work in. I think working in, when I remember back to my integrated days, just different campaigns which have more sort of perhaps kind of longevity, where the planning cycles are a lot longer, a little bit kind of slower paced maybe. That almost is, it's an easier environment to build relationships in, sometimes in doing that sort of work, I think.
Yeah. Do you think it would change? Do you think we'll go back to being more relationship building in sales, or do you think it's just gonna keep going the way it's going?
I do think so. Yeah, I do think so, and I think that would be a really sort of positive thing. I mean, it's weird not wishing to sort of segue into AI and all the rest of it, but I think the output now of an agency, which I think will dramatically change and is kind of changing. The output that's coming out of agencies is immense. The thought leadership is easier than it's ever been in some respects, because of all of the tools that you kind of can use now. So you've got all these agencies sort of pumping out so much kind of marketing material and collateral material and all the rest of it. And I do think there'll be a time where I think clients will get quite kind of exhausting, every agency coming up with, beautiful kind of collateral and great kind of thought pieces and that kind of thing. And I think that sort of human sort of chemistry thing will sort of prevail. I think some of that sort of clutter and freneticism, if that's a word, will perhaps kind of die away in the sort of months, year to come. And I think I don't think anything will change long term in terms of us being a people kind of industry, and also, relationships, creating good chemistry and good relationships always create the best work. I think when I look back at Sense, I feel the work that we've done, most successful work, or work that's been most successful for our clients, there's no sort of coincidence that that's where we've had the best relationships, the best kind of chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it will change. I think we'll get a sort of tipping point where things will normalize a little bit more. But it feels at the moment it's
I think I
full on,
agree with you,
fast-paced.
because and not to make it about AI, it's just another tool that's available. But a few years ago, you're talking about new business, you're talking about thought leadership and creating marketing content and getting it out and being seen on these digital channels. Now AI is essentially producing that en masse for everybody. It's getting very messy, isn't it? So actually, it's the people that need to kind of come through and stand out. And I suppose the only way you can really do that is by working on building people-to-people relationships.
Exactly. Yeah. Answered the
So
question much better than I did there, but I completely agree with it. Yeah, that's a great summary. Yeah.
good stuff. So I was going to ask you to share your new business strategy from Sense, but I think you've pretty much done it throughout that conversation. Is there anything anything in particular maybe that we haven't covered that you're seeing as a real priority for the agency in terms of winning new clients?
I think one thing that we have tried to sort of do much more in the last kind of couple of years or so, again, which is just like marketing common sense, right, is to really think hard about our audience segmentation and kind of break them down. So over the last 18 months or so, we've started to think about prospects in that sort of 99 and 1% split. So it's a bit of kind of buzzwords that are flying around Sense at the moment. Your 90% is your longer term pipeline, is your new, it's the brands that you want to be kind of marking to, and that's probably more of your mass kind of tactics. The 9% are those that are in your periphery. The 1% are your really close kind of relationship with, existing clients and recently kind of lapsed clients or whatever. And I think what that's helped us to do, to think of our audience is always in the 9, the 90 and the 1%. It's helped us kind of align, hopefully, what are some of the right strategies and the right tactics with the right kind of audience. So your 90% kind of audience for us, as I say, that's more about marketing. So it's about brand visibility. It's about the work that you kind of do. Your 1% audience obviously need a whole different set of tactics that is more about nurturing those kind of relationships. So that for us it's a little bit of a kind of a shift. I guess we were perhaps previously, in previous years, we've fallen into that trap of not thinking as hard and as tightly around our actual kind of audience and our audience insight and what do our audience want from us and how should we treat prospects. So that's been not a game changer, but it's definitely helped kind of refine things kind of a little bit. One of the other things, there's all the other sort of tactics I could chat around that is probably no kind of new news to anybody. One of the things that we try to do more at the moment also is collaborations with other agencies. So we work very closely with a PR and a creative communications agency in London. We also work with them for our US kind of business. We've got great chemistry. We have mutual clients and that kind of thing. And actually, we are kind of bedfellows in terms of their discipline expertise and our discipline expertise. And actually, we've done a bit recently of presenting ourselves. We don't have any formal relationships between the agencies, but we have worked together really well. And I think we can provide clients with almost like a bit of a prefabricated agency relationship. A lot of the struggles we see is where clients have to put my brand experience agency, kind of go and play nicely with the PR agency or the sponsorship agency or the above the line agents or whatever, and actually taking clients a solution which is, we're not all part of the same group and we're very separate agencies. However, we just work really well together, and for your type of brief that requires the combination of our expertise, let's have that virtual team. That virtual team may well be kind of applicable and be really kind of appealing to them. So that's been a bit new for us. That sort of joint new putting strategies together between two agencies that are not necessarily linked in any other way. That's been really quite successful, and we're trying to do a little bit more of that at the moment. Yeah, I think clients over the years have become much more, I think, open-minded to agency relationships. There was that time I remember years ago where you white labeled other people's kind of work and you had to be seen there to be delivering absolutely everything. Whereas now I think just being really transparent about that, in our experience, brands are very open-minded to, okay, you're going to put a virtual team together. We're getting best in class in a number of different kind of disciplines, delivered by 2 or 3 agencies who have got a great history and a background of working together. Fine, that suits, I think, for a lot of brands. I think it takes a lot of the pain points away for them.
Well, I think if some of those things that we've already talked about, like the chemistry and the values and everything else, is right between you and whoever you're, affiliating yourself with in that way, why not? Because it's a way that you can hone in on your niche that you identify, that the part that you can deliver, and I'm sure that your partners have got the same thing, in that there's an aspect that they can really deliver as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I also really liked your 99 and 1 pots that you were talking about there. So you mentioned that you've got to treat them all kind of differently, and you found a process, and you're constantly thinking, where are these guys sitting? Are they here or there? Changing your frame of mind and looking at it that way. What's been the kind of the impact of that? What are you seeing in terms of how you're treating your prospects?
I think it's just really helped to sort of organise your approach in a kind of a bit more of a logical way. And as I say, just think about things that is going to make you most relevant, most useful at the right kind of time, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's almost just having those kind of buckets of different like personas, and building out, what is somebody who is a suspect, not a prospect? What's the, what sort of marketing approach to them is kind of most relevant? It's very easy, I think, to confuse those kind of tactics and start treating people that you don't have a relationship with like they're an existing client, and just making an approach which is kind of wrong. So I think it's just really helped. Get you align the strategies and the kind of techniques. I mean, with the 90% for us, it's often, it is more marketing approach, it's thought leadership, it's flexing the kind of work that we do. We're sometimes with some prospects in that bucket not quite at the point yet where it's right for us to start commentating on what they're doing as a brand and how they can do things better, etc., because we don't have that relationship yet. We haven't heard their challenges, we haven't got close to their business, their brand. So I guess previously we may have slipped into that of, well, we've got to go and sort of comment on how they're approaching experiential and how we do it better or different or whatever, but actually, right for your 9%, but not right for the people in the kind of broader hopper, if you like.
Yeah, it's more about exposure, isn't it? It's getting your exposure up with them so that you can move on. I really like that. Definitely. Suspect, not a prospect. I might steal that, Nick. All right, brilliant. I could chat to you all day, but we are running out of time. So, thank you for all of those tips, Nick, and being really clear and transparent about some of the ways that you're working at Sense. I'd like to ask you my quickfire questions, if that's all right with you.
Oh, gosh. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Are you ready? I say quickfire. They're never quick.
Right, okay.
So you can take your time. But I do have a few questions for you to get to know you and what you think about sales. So number 1, what is your favourite thing about business development or sales?
Oh, this is going to be a really obvious answer. It is that thrill of when something kind of works and something kind of moves over the line. So, there's a lot of what I love about sales is that kind of adrenaline moment, where you've been targeting a specific kind of prospect. You've used all of your kind of techniques and smarts and the rest of it, and the meeting lands, the brief lands, you win the business. that still is what drives. There's a lot of, I think you need a huge amount of kind of resilience in your business, but it's those kind of moments that, I think keep me going, keep agencies kind of going. It's the thrill of the chase when you do kind of get those wins.
Exactly,
for sure.
The win.
Yeah,
brilliant. And what is there something that nobody's talking about when it comes to sales and marketing right now?
I think there's something that perhaps is being talked about and not as perhaps much as it should be. And this is not meant to be a controversial kind of answer, but I think that sort of some just naming it, kind of bad behavior by some clients, by some kind of brands in pitching processes and that kind of thing. No agency really wants to kind of talk about it because you don't want to kind of bite the hand that feeds you kind of thing. But I think there's probably across the industry a huge sort of amount of kind of wastage, if you like, certainly in terms of hours and time, and those clients that approach the new business sort of relationship in where there is a clear process sort of organized in a kind of disciplined way, that's becoming, perhaps dare I say, a little bit kind of rarer. So I think more conversation around this in the industry would be a positive thing. More support, and yes, hands up, more support from agencies to help guide clients on perhaps better ways of kind of transaction, go into that sort of new business sort of transaction, would have a big impact, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. We had Laura of Ipon from Ogilvy on a few months ago, who spoke about that as well, actually, and mentioned about the positive pitch pledge, which
Right.
is something trying to get both agencies and brands to commit to. But I think agencies are very open to committing to something, but brands not so much.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think what you're saying, the client is not always right, Nick, basically. Is the rule of that, but that's a really good point. Okay, so your journey, if we could go back, Nick, back in time, to your past self when you were just starting out, would there be a piece of advice that you'd give yourself?
Again, I think it's a really simple one. I think it would be meet as many people as you can, as often as you can. I think within new business, it's very easy to bury your head in your office and with everything you need to plan, everything you need to do, every piece of content you have to write and connection you have to make. And I think for me, even if you're meeting somebody and you can't necessarily see from the off what the natural connection would be and what the natural relevance would be, just go out there and kind of do it. I rarely have a coffee or go to an event and meet. I rarely have those connections where you think, well, actually, there was no, nothing kind of helpful or good that kind of came from that. So I think that would be the thing. I guess it's really, really hard to do, I think, in today's kind of climate, but just connecting with people as I say, as much as you can, as often as you can, people from all different backgrounds, all different businesses, whether you can help them as well. Obviously, it's not just a one-sided kind of thing, but I think that would be the advice to me 20 years ago. Just get out more.
Get out.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. And for those, starting out on their sales career at the moment where that's a bit tougher, I would agree with you, and I say get out to all the events. We've just been to loads of events that summer kind of period where it's just brilliant to see people in person and have a conversation and network. Remember what that feels like.
Yeah, definitely.
So
we're trying to
great.
do more events. Again, another sort of, a lot of agencies, of course, are doing it, but just more in-person events. And we had one a couple of months ago on our shopper team kind of hosted event. And just the immediate sort of chemistry and reaction, it just sets the relationship off with prospects on a totally kind of different footing. You're not selling, it's just it's remarkable that the difference it makes just when you meet people in person versus you're trying to sell over online.
Exactly. Completely agree. All right. So in your experience, what do you think makes a good salesperson great?
I think definitely there has to be an awful lot of resilience. There's a lot about new business which is quite a thankful kind of task. It's kind of thankless kind of task, if you like, where there's a lot of knockbacks a lot of the time. So I think resilience makes the new business people I've worked with who are great. They have a real tough, thick skin, and they have that and have kind of resilience. I think also just the point really I kind of made, I guess, about just kind of looking back at kind of what works. There's a definitely a part of new business people that the characteristic is about hunger and running forward and meeting people and always looking at the kind of future. I think that point of just looking back and constantly analysing what's worked, what should we do more of, what should we leave behind and just draw a line under. I think that's that's definitely a big factor.
Great. Brilliant. Good advice. Now, if your career was a movie, Nick, what would it be called?
I was thinking about this. Well, it depends on the kind of day, I think. On some days it would probably be Mission Impossible, but that's a little bit negative, isn't it? So I think probably being a little bit kind of more positive about it. It's a bit of a cliche one, but probably like Fast and Furious, the whole roller coaster, ups, downs, but still hopefully
fast moving, jam packed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a bit of an obvious answer. It's probably that.
I love it. And finally, I don't know if you have one of these or whether you've given it much thought, but your hype song when you're getting ready for big pitch.
Oh my gosh, this is probably going to like really cheesy, and I think it's probably and I was trying to remember this morning who it is actually by. I think the title is "You Get What You Give," is it? And was it the New Radicals? That probably really ages me now, and kind of it's like I think they were like 90s or something kind of band. But I think for me, it's kind of pitching and sales. It's how hard you try. Every agency has got a great idea, has got a fantastic strategy. It'll be on budget, all that kind of stuff. Tick, hygiene factor. I genuinely think something I was taught very, very early on in my career, that it's the agencies that just simply try harder. You've just got to kind of do a better job. You've got to just want it more and show that you're more kind of hungry. So, and then you'll get what you what hopefully you'll kind of deserve, if you like.
I love it. I'm going to go give it a listen. Get me hyped up for the afternoon. I think that's brilliant. That's my last one. You've been great, Nick. Really, really interesting bits of advice that you've given there, and great to hear about Sense. And the way that you work. So I think we're pretty much just out of time, so we'll have to leave it there. But thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. Really, really nice chatting to you, Amanda. Thank you.
And you. And that's a wrap. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next month with more expert advice and success stories. See you next time.